joining us, we have Dr. Jayashree Ranga. She's currently an associate professor at the Salem State University and is currently serving as a board member for the Northeastern section of the American Chemical Society, as well as the coordinator of Chemistry Celebrates the Earth Week coordinator. She's received several awards for her active community involvement, including the 2019 ACS Volunteer of the Year Award and the ACS ChemLuminary Award for Outstanding CCEW Community Involvement. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Ranga. Would you please start by giving us some insight into your professional and educational journey that's led you to where you are right now?
Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for the sweet introduction, and it's always a pleasure working with you. And it's really nice that we have programs like Chem Celebrate Earth Week, which helps me interact with students like you, which is pretty amazing. So I did regarding my career. I grew up in a middle class family back in India, and I was a bachelor's student. I had no idea what to do with my life, so I landed up doing my master's in India, and I'm probably going to bring up more about my advisor later in this conversation. And it was him who inspired me to do PhD. And of course, doing anything in career, I would owe it to my parents and my siblings, who were always like my pillar to keep going. And now my husband, who is a rock support, and people like you who are always supportive. And it's always my students. After my PhD, I did my postdoc at the University of Illinois, and that's where I got into teaching, and it inspired me to do teaching as a career, take up teaching as a career. And I was at Georgia State, and now I'm at Salem State, and I would be doing this, nothing else. I love what I do right now. So that's a little bit of who I am.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So going to the beginning of like your STEM career, when did you realize that you wanted to pursue a career in STEAM, and how has your journey sort of evolved since then?
So in 2007, I had a dream job in a corporate world. It was close to a six-digit salary. That's everything that I dreamt for. Money was everything, like as everybody thinks about when you are in your 20s and 30s. And at the same time, I was working with kids on a STEM outreach project. And that's something that I totally loved, working with students. And then something dawned on me, and I'm like, why not try out teaching as a career? I'm so glad I chose teaching back then. And since then, I've been teaching chemistry at different universities. And STEM has always been STEAM to me, to be honest, because it's not just about teaching. Teaching chemistry is not just STEM. How you teach, how do you use art to really communicate chemistry is important. So I use a lot of colors in my teaching chemistry. And honestly, my first publication in the field of education is about using colors to teach chemistry. If that makes any sense to you.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because that is definitely a main pillar of what I'm trying to bring about, which is it's not just STEM, it's STEAM, and art is inherently a part of it. So thank you for bringing that up. And so you mentioned that like your parents, your siblings, your mentors have played a role in sort of supporting you in your career. Could you like name a specific person who's inspired you or motivated you to pursue the career that you are right now?
Honestly, it's so many people who have inspired me to where I am today, but I would really like to dedicate this profession to my parents, and particularly to my mom. My mom was a teacher, and she gave up teaching job when she had me, when she got married and had me. Like, that's when she was more of a homemaker. And I truly appreciate that. Like, she made that sacrifice for us so that we could have proper education. They were the best teachers. And of course, my siblings were super supportive. I loved them so much. And my parents were the best teachers I ever had, because role models for me, because they always led by example. And I think that's extremely important for me. And also, I want to especially dedicate my career to my PhD advisor, Dr. Kamal. He was a great teacher. We all know that a great teacher inspired. That's exactly what he did for us. So when I was in my master's, he was my teacher, one of the instructors, and he has an amazing way of breaking down complex chemistry into very simple concepts. And it's just unfolding by itself. The knowledge was unfolding by itself without any effort. That's how I felt being in a class. And I think knowingly or unknowingly, he has inspired me to be a teacher somewhere. And I owe it to him big time.
Yeah. So, sorry, I know this was something you had mentioned before, which is before you started, or you started teaching, and that's where you really felt at home. And could you just expand more about what you enjoy as your profession as a professor and some of your highlights in that career.
So I'm an associate professor at Salem State University currently, and there are three aspects of my teaching that I truly, truly enjoy, and I wouldn't trade it to anything else, even for $1 trillion. But I do. The first thing is I love teaching. Everybody says teaching is so boring. How do you do the same thing? But never ever two sets of students are the same set of students. So I truly love teaching, and my scholarship is based on teaching and learning. And what fascinates me is how students actually learn. So that's a fascinating question, and it's really a lot of psychology involved there. And I love teaching and making an impact on teaching and learning, especially at a school like Salem State. We have a lot of first generation learners and underrepresented students and minority students. So it's really like a first time college goer. I almost, even though both my parents were educated and had degrees, like, when I came to the United States, I just had no friends, no family, no one that I really, really knew, but like how I built my own, equations and relationships with my friends and with my professionals and things like that. So I think I want to be, so many people help me. So this is a great opportunity to pay it forward. So the second aspect of my teaching I totally love is I love to formally and informally advise students about future careers, because I was that person, like, if you go back 30 years ago, I was like, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and with my profession. So many people like Dr. Kamath and so many other faculty members have really shaped me in identifying what I want to do. And I take a privilege in working with students and guiding them of future careers and opportunities in the field of chemistry. And one thing that I feel, the third aspect is, like, I know I was a bookworm and I was a very nerdy person. I never interacted with the outside world that much. And also, I would say those were different times and that's how things were. But I love organizing STEM/STEAM events at the Museum of Science and different venues where students get an opportunity to do hands-on demonstrations to other people. It really empowers students in ways that one cannot imagine. It offers an experience that we just cannot offer in the classroom. For example, in my own personal way, I feel like I'm a more confident person when I'm out there doing demonstrations and things like that. For example, speaking now, I mean, 10 minutes ago, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, but right now it just feels so organic and natural. So I think that's a very important skill that we need our students to develop. So that's something that I truly, this is, well, three aspects of my profession that I really, really enjoy doing it. And the highlights is, like, student success is very important. So when I see my students succeeding, I mean, I feel, I think it's time for me to hand over the baton from me to students. I think, like, whatever I do, if I'm helping students, that makes my efforts worthwhile end of year. So that's what I really enjoy right now.
Thank
Just
you.
last week, I had a student who said, like, who got into MIT for a summer internship. That's like awesome. That's my real celebration moment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, moving into, I know you mentioned like being there to support your students, especially when you moved to America and tried to build sort of a support network. It's also important for you to like make college students comfortable in feeling supported. And I guess mo- moving into that some more, how do you think we can like better support students within university settings?
I think I'm going to talk more about that in the mentorship questions. So I think, like, there is an aspect. I think one aspect I feel is we all need, like, support structures, and
Yeah.
especially we need mentors. If I'm something today, it's, I owe it to like a infinite number of mentors I had in some form or the other. I think different people have taught me different things. I think when I sit there and provide advising to my students, I think that makes a huge important. It's very important. And I think, like, when you, I think another aspect is about the storytelling aspect. It feels like a mundane stuff, but I think storytelling is very powerful. When students hear stories saying that I was a student 3 decades ago and I couldn't afford a bus ride, or sometimes I would save a bus ride to have a takeout over the weekend with my family, and I would really have 2 pairs of dresses. I had a lot of the Indian dresses, but the kind of fashion that was, like, I had 2 of those, and I would take turns, like, some of my, so it's just, it used to be a struggle, but it just has taught me so much. Instead of buying new dresses, I would invest in a textbook, and it paid off big time to me. So I didn't know that education could offer things that I never imagined I could have. And I'm very grateful for the education. And again, I turn back to my parents for giving me that platform to educate myself. And they were very supportive, and they sacrificed a lot of their personal comforts to educate their kids. And I'm very grateful to them as well. So I think mentorship is absolutely the most important, one of the most important aspects of helping students to succeed in an environment or in a community.
Yeah. Could you like elaborate more on like the mentorship support networks that played like a significant role in your career? I know you touched upon it somewhere on like your PhD advisor. How did that sort of inspire you to be the mentor you are today?
So, for example, like mentorship is vital for success in my own personal life, and we need so called role models to shape and navigate our dreams. As
Mm.
mentioned earlier, my parents were like awesome mentors, and they always led by examples. And my siblings, my family supported me with my dreams. But the hard part was I had a very tough time figuring out what my dream was, a professional dream, so to speak. So that's when I was in my master's program, Dr. Kamath introduced me to the world of research, and he was my PhD advisor. And I joined this group for doctoral research. And at that time, I really lacked confidence. So confidence was so just trying to communicate, ask the right questions in the research, and providing that kind of encouragement and appreciating the ideas that I generated during research. I think that filled in a lot of confidence in me. And from there, I would say there was no turning back. And I had that sort of like built in that confidence in myself. And just to give another person, like, there are so many people I can keep on going, but I would say another person who inspired me was Dr. Vijaya Kamath, that is Dr. Kamath's wife. When I got an offer from the United States, she was super supportive. She was like, oh, awesome, you should go there. And honestly, when I was moving to the United States, I had no idea what to shop for. Like, I had no idea. She kept on saying, oh, it's going to be cold, and it's going to be like, in the United States, Illinois is going to be pretty cold. I had no idea what cold really meant. So she really took me for shopping, and she helped me buy those jackets, and she helped me in buying. I didn't know, like, when you were traveling to, like, for your grandparents' place in India, you had suitcases, but she's like, no, 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 you got to have a big suitcase. I had no idea what kind of suitcases. I mean, it's a small part, but I think it's really amazing that, that you have people like that. And my uncles and extended uncles and aunts, everybody was very supportive, and I had no idea what a credit card was. So I mean, people talking about like credit cards and things like that. Oh, okay, that's something that's interesting. So, and my postdoc, when I arrived here, my postdoc boss was super nice. Like, and I was super broke, and I had no money to get started. There were friends who were ready to help, but he was like, oh, like if you need any money to get jumpstart your life here, I'm happy to share some money. I'm like, really? Like, would you trust me? And he's like, tell me how much you want. Like, it's like I brought like, I don't know, $500 or $1,000 with me. And in a day I was done, because I had to sign up my summer lease and, like, health insurance. And I was like, I have a lot of money, but, like, he was like, he was really supportive that way. And there was, my lab was in chemical engineering department when I came here as a postdoc, and mostly everybody was male. Like, but I had a lot of, like, boys in in my group. At the same time, there was a faculty member who was women. Like, she mentored me, and she was an amazing teacher in the department. And she was one person who totally inspired me to teach. And honestly, like, then when I moved to, say, Georgia State, I had like amazing mentors there. And when I moved to Salem State, I had all my colleagues, all the colleagues who had tenure. They were amazing mentors. They would help me with, oh, you should do this to get your tenure. And I mean, everything back looks like a history, but, like, I think it's an ongoing process. Like, I'm still seeking help from mentors. At the same time, I want to make sure that I paid forward. And last week I was sitting with a student and trying to tell them how to really prepare for an interview. I know first time I went to interview, I had no idea how to face an interview and how to respond to interview questions and things like that. So somebody held my hand. I think that little bit of hand holding in a mentoring way is, I think, absolutely important for students.
That's very profound, and it seems like mentoring stems like beyond just professional development, but also having that personal support and network. So moving into sort of our next subset of questions, which are more focused on like diversity and women in STEM. What are your thoughts about representation of women in STEM, and how do you believe diversity and inclusion impacts STEM innovation?
I think it's extremely important. Like, I cannot stress how important it is to have diversity in our communities, be it professional or personal surrounding. I think you get to learn a lot. And especially being women, I feel like it's very important that when I just like, my style is the first day I go to my class, I share who I am as a human being, what I like. I love to cook, I like to hike, and then all the struggles that I have experienced in the past. And I see that people open up, especially women students, they come and open up to you with their struggles, and it's very important that you sort of like hear them out and guide them accordingly so that they can get the right kind of mentorship within the community. And also sometimes, like, a couple of times it's like, oh, students are just missing the class. I think when you just open up, having a diverse, when students feel that another person has walked through the same journey or a similar journey, they were like, oh, here is the person who's standing in front of us who was in our shoes 3 decades ago. I think that sends a very powerful message, is uh, my understanding. I could be wrong, but I think I am sort of like, believing in that. And
Yeah.
so, like, I feel when people realize that, oh, okay, she has walked the same path, like, what did you do right? Like, here is an example where education can offer you a dream that you didn't know existed. So I never knew, like, 30 years ago that there is a dream out where I'll be a university professor and things like that. So it's just really like, having mentors who are like, no, it's not impossible. If I could do it, you could do it. So I think that kind of conversation is very important. And last week we had an amazing program at our university. It's diversity in STEM. Like, people were sharing different stories. So I think it's very important to hear like what the other kinds of stories, and we have to hear from every kind of community to see what they have in you to get where they are. Sometimes people are like, oh, you just got this job. No, 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 I had a hard path too. So I walked into this country with 2 suitcases full with like hope and dreams, and like, it's still like, I mean, success is not a thing. I'm going to probably highlight more about that later, but success is a feeling. It's an ongoing process, and you got to constantly strive for it. And I think I truly feel diversity helps in that aspect.
Yeah, and so you mentioned like when you share your personal experiences with your students, they seem to open up more and see that hope that they can sort of follow like a similar career path, or they can get to, their dreams and aspirations. And I was wondering, how do you believe like visibility and storytelling and sharing personal experiences can benefit and inspire future generations, especially young girls aspiring in STEM?
I think that's extremely important, absolutely important. I think we need to have venues to share storytelling. I know I used to get bored when my dad used to tell the same struggles that he like. I'm like, Dad, you have repeated this like 20 times, 200 times, a million times. Like, but now I think back and see like, how much I appreciate that. As a young kid, maybe I did not, but right now I appreciate the background that he came from and he built it. And I think that was like, knowingly or unknowingly, that gave me confidence that when my dad was a 17 or 18-year-old, he went into a very remote place and he was working for military. He was a civilian working for military in India. So he went there and he established himself and built a career and built a family. So that sort of like, is a very important aspect of, I think that gives me that arrangement that if he could do it, maybe I should give a try as well. And that how it inspires. And that's extremely important, especially when you're stuck in your day-to-day grind. I think that offers some kind of a hope. And it's not like a it is not something that's given to you. It's just that you work hard. Like, some things like, when you're going through a challenging phase, that's just a path that we are offered. And I think when there is an opportunity out there, I think you got to put in your hard work to seek that opportunity and make the most of that opportunity. I truly believe that Rome was not built in a day. It's like little drops of water make the mighty ocean. You got to really work hard, like one day at a time, and get to there. Like, for students, it's one way to really accomplish that is do your best to get the best grades possible in your classes and like grow in your undergraduate career and seek internship opportunities, and then look for higher education if you're interested. And if you want to do other things, absolutely, there are opportunities out there. And again, as I said, success is not a thing. It's not the end. It's just a feeling that you relish, as one would enjoy a favorite dessert at the end of a meal. So
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that insight and also that advice. In your opinion, based off of where you're working right now and what you've seen, are there steps that your institution has made in order to create a more inclusive environment for underrepresented groups within STEM? And then what more do you think that institutions and organizations could do to further promote that?
So I think COVID has really offered us a challenge, but since we are slowly but surely moved out of COVID, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there to build a more diverse and inclusive community. I'm very grateful for where I work. I have a very inclusive and diverse department, and all my colleagues when I came in here, they've really supported me in ways I cannot express my gratitude to them, really getting into, so they would help me what I should do, what are all the kind of things that I would need to do to get my job, get my tenure is more like a permanent job in your position. So I am very grateful to that. But one thing that I feel is whenever possible, if we can have a lot of mentorship opportunities and the storytelling opportunities for students. I think last week when I was there at that, people were sharing their stories, like regardless of gender or whatever background you are from. I think hearing out everybody's experience is extremely important. I'm sure behind every success there's a powerful story which narrates all the challenges that they have overcome, and I think there got to be more venues to share those stories. I think I really like that storytelling piece question in your questionnaire, because that's truly important in our diversity conversations.
Sort of to move towards the end of our interview, to our last question, what is some advice that you would give young aspiring girls who are looking at this video and thinking about where they want to enter in the STEAM field? What advice would you give to them? And then reflecting sort of to the beginning of when you started your career in STEM, what advice would you give to yourself?
So I think one piece of advice I really want to jump on is there's no shortcut to hard work. Everything, you got to work hard for what you are. So I think that's important, and that's important to keep going. There's going to be a lot, as much as I narrated all the stories, there were a lot of challenges. And I think one important thing is don't hesitate to ask for help. There are a lot of people out there who want to help, and sometimes I think the biggest challenge is people don't know that you want help. So if you go and ask for help, I would say I'm very blessed that every time I've asked for help, I've gotten help in one form or the other from people. And it's been when I was a student, I've asked people for visa questions, and if they don't know the answer, they direct me to the other person, they direct me to another person. Sometimes it's a very frustrating long journey, but eventually I found the answer. So again, don't give up on the hard work and go and seek help. And also keep your mind open, and these days. And one thing that I wanted to mention is teaching, as awesome as it has changed rapidly. So adapt yourself to the changes. So when I was starting to teach, it was like a chalk and board. Now I teach with iPad. So the quicker you keep in, the more tuned on you are with the growth in your field, that really helps you with being in sync with the technology for your profession. So I think that's very important too. So ask for help and don't give up on yourself. Life is hard at some point. So, and make sure don't give up on things. It's hard. Sometimes it's curveball after curveball. And if we have a few minutes, I was hit by a car when I was I was a pedestrian in Atlanta. At that time, I was single. I had moved to a new city. I had zero friends. I didn't know anyone. But when I opened my eyes, I was in the emergency room, I had no one. And the police kept asking me, do you know anyone that I can call? I was like, whom do I call? I don't know anyone in this new town. But there were so many, life turned out okay. I came out of it. Coincidentally, there was another friend who came and helped me out. And it was a very dark period of my life. But it's just that I sought help from her. And honestly, I can never pay it forward back to her, but I try my best to pay it forward. So when you have endured and you're in a better position, make sure you pay it forward and trust in yourself. There is something that is out, and don't be hesitant to change yourself. Like, if your goals change, your professional goals change, it's no big deal. So make sure, like, you adapt yourself for that change. And the last, I know I don't want to, I can keep on going on this, but like, I want to give one last piece of advice. Life is important. So make sure you have fun in your personal life, balance your personal and professional life, and personal people around you, your siblings, your parents, like your friends, and your professional life. Everything is equally important, if not one thing is more or less. Like, make sure, don't give up on things, and make sure like you balance them out and do your best to stay happy. So take time out for yourself and have fun, have good vacations, and like, when you can afford them. And you don't have to go to a very fancy place. Choose things that are very affordable for you.
Yeah.
And all the very best. I mean, wishing everyone who is watching all the very best in their future careers and future lives.
Thank you so, so much for this interview and for all your answers and genuinely sharing your story. Is yeah, that's all for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ashi.